So in this video, I just wanted to do a video talking about some of the challenges that I've had being an INTJ and how I've overcome them. I mean, for you to overcome a challenge, basically it has to be conscious in your mind, and then you have to have the tools and the willpower and the desire to get it fixed. So these are only, I think I'm gonna talk about maybe 3 or 4 of the challenges that I feel like I've had as an INTJ. And then I'll talk about a couple challenges that are on my conscious radar, but I haven't fixed them yet. And then there are, you know, who knows, thousands of challenges that aren't even on my conscious radar yet. So in a few years, we'll talk about those. When you go through some insecurities, you develop these coping mechanisms, and they're not always the greatest, and they don't always serve you the best long term. So I want to talk about some of those coping mechanisms, basically, that I developed, and some of my reactions to feeling like I didn't fit in, and then how I fixed those. So the first coping mechanism I think that INTJs probably can tend to develop is over knowledge. So spending too much time by themselves and getting too much knowledge. And I think knowledge obviously isn't a problem, that's not a problem, but it becomes a problem if it's a coping mechanism for feeling insecure. Like if you feel like you don't belong with people, so you're now using academia as a coping mechanism. And I definitely did this, especially at a time in my life right toward the end of college. I had a bunch of friends move away, and I was all of a sudden feeling very lonely. And the way, this is like kind of a classic thing that happens in my life, probably because I hang out with a lot of ENPs and then they're constantly moving. So I just had a bunch of my friends move away, and I was just feeling like really lonely. And for several months, I spent like all my time, I would go to Barnes & Noble every day. I literally had a routine, it was so bad. I went to Barnes & Noble and I picked up like 7 books. Then I would go sit down at my spot, and there was like a group of us that were there every day. And I would find one of the books that seemed interesting. It was about the stock market, or I was reading a lot of social justice books at the time because, you know, that FI was just getting really flared. And so I would go and I'd read 1 book a day. So because my husband was at work, I would go to Barnes & Noble, I would read an entire book. I was there for 5 hours probably. And then I would go home. Of course, but I was always skipping the intros. I don't know if that's an INTJ thing to do, but I do not have patience for intros. So that's what I would do every day. Now the problem was I began to have the sense that I was a false expert. I all of a sudden felt like I was an expert on the stock market, and that I was an expert on how the housing market was going to go. And I was an expert on all these topics. So then I would get all this knowledge bottled up. So on the rare occasions that I was around people, I would basically be spewing them with all this knowledge. And it was quite frankly like really angsty knowledge, and no one wants to be around that. No one wants to just like be spewed with politics every time they're around you, or this is how the stock market's gonna go, or like it was just really unhealthy. It gets to the point where you're very unobjective. When I get so much into FI, I'm like, oh, I'm so objective right now. And I was just listening to a John Maxwell quote, and he was like, I can't remember exactly how it went, but it was like, we're overeducated well beyond the realm of our action. And I think sometimes that can be really true for INTJs. When I get unhealthy, it's really important for me to consciously use TE and SE. So like I'm a teacher, and so I realized that I could have went to college for 20 years to be a teacher, and I wouldn't have learned nearly as much as the actual experiential knowledge of doing student teaching. I think I learned a lot more there. And that's something that I don't think INTJs really get, and I didn't get that for a long time. Because I spent all my time like doing great at high school and academics, and it felt like it was working well for me for a really long time, until all of a sudden it wasn't working for me. So I think it's really important for INTJs to realize that you actually have to have experiential knowledge. And INTJs can tend to become critics when they haven't actually, you know, put themselves in the arena. And so I think it's important to put yourself in the arena, go through the Dunning-Kruger effect, realize that you suck, and then actually get better at it. And then you can have kind of this true confidence instead of just this head knowledge. Like then you can actually get some real experiential knowledge. And then you can have both. I mean, there's nothing wrong with having both of those kinds of knowledge. But if you're becoming critical of other people when you haven't even attempted it yourself, then that's really a problem. Okay. The second problem that I care a lot about this one. I basically thought that if you cared about looks, then you were really inauthentic. So I proceeded to intentionally look ugly for probably all throughout college. I intentionally looked ugly because I just thought people were so inauthentic and they only care about looks, so I'm just gonna look ugly. The whole time I was in college, I literally didn't own a hairbrush. So I didn't brush my hair for 3 years, and I just didn't care about looks. And I was like, if people are real, then they'll like me for being ugly, and if they don't like me, well, then turns out that they're not real and they're just fake. And that didn't actually go that well for me, because then what I ended up realizing is that I was being a hypocrite. I wanted to be around attractive people that took care of themselves, people that had good basic hygiene, but I expected other people to not do that to me. So I expected other people to be really authentic and like me, even though I looked like trash and literally hadn't brushed my hair in 3 years. But I expected them to look nice and well put together and like they cared about themselves. And so I think that's where the problem comes in, is the way you look really communicates what you are like on the inside. And as it turns out, I was very unhealthy on the inside, and I looked really unkempt and disheveled on the outside. And it turns out that people wouldn't listen to me, and then I developed this like inferiority complex that I'm not good enough, people never listen to my ideas. But it just comes down to, I've said this before, and I originally heard this on Personality Hacker, but they talked about like the steak and sizzle. Like I expected people to really like me for the meat and the depth, but the sizzle was not there. On the outside, I looked rancid, and I'm like, come eat this steak. I know it looks bad, but I promise it tastes good. And it's like, people aren't gonna do that. Like, on the outside, they make assumptions about who you are based on what you look like. And so I finally realized with NI that I make assumptions about people, like from my perspective about people, changes based on what they look like. And so I looked in the mirror and I was like, okay, based on first impression, based on what I look like, what do people think of me? Do they think that what I would like people to think of me is that I'm mature, that I'm like a boss, that I've got my life together, that I'm really deep? Do I look like that from the image I'm presenting? No, I don't look like that. I look like someone who's really insecure, spends way too much time alone, and has anxiety issues. And one thing that really clicked for me is I looked around at all the people that I went to school with that had a lot of money, and they looked really attractive. And I thought, there's no way that these people were just born attractive. And I started thinking about all the ways that money can make you more attractive. And I was like, there's braces, you can get contacts instead of glasses, you can have your hair done anyway, you can like be tanned. And so I started realizing that looks are really malleable and changeable. And I don't need to spend like that much money. Like if you look at celebrities before and after, like if you look at celebrities before they were famous and after, they're not even really attractive people until after they became famous. And the difference is the money and all the work that the stylists and different people put in. So what that made me realize is that looks aren't static, and that with money and a lot of hard work, you can change that. And so I wasn't gonna go to that length. I'm not gonna have a personal stylist. I'm not gonna spend like tons of money on it, but you can find a middle ground, and you can spend a little bit of money, and you can put in a little bit of work, and you can look a lot better. So I think INTJs really need to learn that looks aren't static, and that you can really affect the way you look. And I started getting treated a lot differently. I feel like I get taken a lot more seriously. The videos that I think I look the best in get the best views. And like there's one video in particular where I was feeling like crap, but I filmed a video anyways, and I didn't get ready at all, like one bit, and it's got the least views. So I mean, it works. And I've got a lot of INTJs watching my channel, so you guys are hypocrites if you didn't watch that one. Okay, so the next issue is that I think INTJs can have deep insecurities. So you have deep insecurities, went through school feeling like you didn't belong. All of a sudden you stumble upon Myers-Briggs and cognitive functions, or socionics, or voltology for some of you. You know, some people, whatever you stumbled upon to. And you realize that INTJs are a relatively small percentage of the population. And so that starts making you feel a little bit special. You had this deep insecurity for such a long time. And I think shame and pride are two sides of the same coin. Usually when you're manifesting high in the other, you've got the other one as well. And so you had this deep insecurity, and then you realized you were a small percentage of the population. So then you start feeling special, and then they get this complex. I probably had this for a couple of years. Like, we're the special ones. We're the smallest percentage of the population. The comments I've seen on my channel are ridiculous. One commenter said, I've actually been thinking that INTJs are the norm and all other personalities are just aberrations from the norm. Like, what the heck? Like, literally, that's like the epitome of this INTJ superiority complex. It's just, but I had it, I mean, I'm only being so like harsh because I had it myself as well for couple of years. And then I finally grew an appreciation for the different personality types. Like, my husband's an ISFP, and I just realized like how likable he is, and he makes friends so easily. And I actually started, it's kind of back to the beginning, started getting a jealousy for the other personality types, which is basically what I had in childhood. I felt so abnormal, just wish I could be popular, and I was kind of jealous of them. So then you go through this superiority, and then I started having more of this healthy appreciation for the other personality types. I started having a really big appreciation for the dominant FE users. I was like, they can persuade a group so well. The group will just do literally anything that they want. And so I started getting a really big appreciation for these people. And it's like, you can't on a daily basis practice all of the bad habits of an INTJ and then be able to tout all the strengths of an INTJ. Like, it just didn't make any sense for me to literally isolate myself, be so lonely, and this is those are the habits I was practicing on a day-to-day basis, and at the same time come around and tout like, I'm so objective, we're the most objective personality, we're the masterminds. Like, you can't go around and tout that. Is it really a mastermind thing to do, to spend all your time alone and to spend all your money on McDonald's because you're having an SE grip situation? Like, so I would tout being a mastermind when I was literally the least objective person in the world. I was so insecure and so much in my feelings that there's no way in hell that I was in any way objective. So I shouldn't be sitting there acting like we're the best personality type when I'm literally the epitome of a loser every single day. Since it came from such a deep place of insecurity, I had to get to a place where I actually had some security. So I got around some really good people. I think that's one of the best ways to get over that. And then another way, like, I actually put actions to my words. Like, instead of just saying, oh, I'm a mastermind, I'm actually starting to do things now where, I mean, I said it before, like the Dunning-Kruger effect, like, just realize how much you suck and then get better at it, and then actually develop a skill in something so that you can feel like so you can feel like you have like a true strength in it, because you can see right through yourself. When you're going around bragging to other people about yourself, you see through it. Like no one who actually is secure and who's actually a great mature person goes around bragging about themselves. So if you feel the need to go around in YouTube comments or on Reddit and talk about how awesome yourself, like just check it, like actually go out and do something with your life, and then you won't feel the need to prove it to others, because your life will be proof in and of itself. Okay, this is the last one. So I've had to try to figure out how to have more fun, and I have done that through SE. Now, a lot of times when I'm in SE, it's not great. I mean, like the time when I was depressed, I like had this routine where I went to McDonald's every single day. That was just a bad time in my life. All sorts of bad stuff was going on there, but I was in a grip not doing anything with my life. But now I've since learned like how to use it in a fun, creative way. So I started DJing, and that's something that's completely out of the box for me. Like that's not something I ever would do. And I told my family about it. They were like, what? Like my family was literally so shocked, because that's not something I would do. And I basically started developing SE, and I came back for Christmas one year, and my sister was like, what happened to you? You are so much more extroverted than you used to be. And I don't know, I just think that's a testament to actually working on SE. I think it's been really powerful. For some reason, working on SE has given me more benefits than working on TE. I don't know, maybe because SE was literally not on my radar my entire life, and so it creates a more dramatic shift. It's been really fun. And I've actually found that it's more vulnerable than I think, and I think that's maybe a reason why I avoided it for so long, is that I felt like I had a strength in academia and that I was above my peers, and so I couldn't really fail at it. It was kind of a way of self-protection, so I wouldn't fail. But now I'm doing something that I haven't really done before, so I really feel like a beginner, and I really feel like I'm not good at it. But for the first time, I'm just trying to do things like even if I'm not good at them. So there are a couple things that are on my conscious radar right now, but I haven't fixed them yet and don't know exactly how to fix them. The first one is low energy, and that's something that I realized about myself after reading about the Enneagram 5. So that's not really a Myers-Briggs thing, but I realized that I'm just so low energy, and I realized that I've used that excuse for so long, and the whole idea is that it's like, no, you actually have abundant energy, but that's something that hasn't clicked for me yet. So that's something I'm still working on. If you know how to make yourself believe you have more energy, let me know, because I'm literally such a low energy person. And the other thing I'm trying to work on is spending too much time alone. And it seems like it's going to take so much energy if I'm gonna go and be around people. But then if I spend people that I really care about and I feel like are my good friends, then I actually feel really good and feel kind of energized after hanging out with people. But so that's another thing. So spending too much time alone and then feeling like I have such low energy. So those are things that are on my conscious radar, and I haven't quite figured out how to, you know, do better at those. But I mean, I guess I have some hints toward them. I mean, one about the low energy is I know that when I'm productive, I get like boosts of energy when I'm productive. So that's one thing, but I don't want to be productive all the time. You know, if I was just kind of lazy. I don't know if I want to do that. So yeah, so there's some hurdles that I've overcome. Basically where I've gotten some of this information from. When I first started learning about Myers-Briggs, I went to Personality Hacker, and their big thing that if you've watched them, their big thing is to work on your Copilot. So I really worked on that for a long time, and that actually was very helpful. I was in that really unhealthy time in my life for like 3 years when I was like going to McDonald's and Barnes and Noble and super unhealthy. So working on TE really, really helped with a lot of that. Then I've gotten to a point where I felt like I was kind of hitting a wall. Like I was like, I don't know if it's really helping me that much anymore. And even the way that I work on TE is still so introverted. Like I try to make it more extroverted. Like I'm going to lead people and be a part of a group and, try to make it extroverted. But I'm just like, how about I get a planner and we'll call that TE. So that's one thing I did. Then I had listened to C.S. Joseph, which I know a lot of people don't like him, but I feel like some of his stuff is true, and so I just take it with a grain of salt and take all his personal issues, throw them out. But I feel like, so he said to work on, so if you're an INTJ, to next work on being an ESFP. And so I was like, well, I'll give it a try. I mean, if it does nothing, it does nothing. So then I've really tried working on being more like an ESFP, and I found actually a lot of personal growth gains with that. And then there are a couple things that I've randomly done, like not intentionally for personal growth, but I feel like did help me. One was I lived with roommates for a while. That made me way more extroverted, made me feel like part of a group. That was really helpful. Another thing, I mean, I feel like it's had pros and cons, but I married an ISFP. I mean, he's in the classic ISFP thing. So he's like a vegan, and he plays tennis and bikes all the time. So I eat way better than I ever would if I wasn't married to him. I do a lot more activities than I would if I wasn't married to him. So he is really, maybe that's why it was easier for me to work on SEs, because I'm literally married to him. So he would really like to work on SE all the time. So he really encourages that. So those have probably been helpful. So yeah, maybe you could get around people that are more of what you would like to be like, and then they rub off on you, but it would take a while for them to rub off on you. Okay, so I think that's basically it, guys. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know if you have any advice for me about how I can work on those two last things I mentioned, and then if you have any hurdles you've overcome yourself, let me know, because I'm all about personal growth. Thanks, guys. Bye.